discuss this now. Brooke's about to be cross-examined.
Jonathan, I really think you should read this.
We're going to be cited for contempt if you don't sit down.
Read it, will you? It's going to change the whole face of your case.
Mr. Young, would you do us the courtesy of allowing Ms. Emerson to cross-examine the witness?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, but, please, I'd like to request a brief recess.
Now?
Yes, Your Honor. Just a couple of minutes, if it please the court.
We'll take a 10-minute recess.
Hey, babe.
Mike.
I had to call all over town to find out where you were. And now here I am bringing you flowers. What's wrong with this picture?
I'm sorry. I should have let you know.
You're darn right you should have.
They really are beautiful.
They're roses. You're beautiful. How you doing?
Frightened. There's something wrong with the baby. It scares me.
I don't like it, Teresa.
Jones has found something.
Yeah, whatever it is, they're happy about it.
Do you have any idea what it is?
Not a clue. That's what worries me.
Well, why should it worry you? We know who the guilty party is.
Yeah, but does the jury?
Well, whatever it is, it won't come out today. They'll never put Jones on the stand.
Why not?
Because he's hiding something. And I'd love to get at him.
Are you sure about this?
Absolutely.
Well, let's get it up there.
We will, right after Brooke's cross-examination.
How are you going to do that?
Obviously, you're going to take the stand.
What?
It's your work. You have to explain it.
Can't we convince the judge to put Hunter on the stand right now?
Not if Teresa wants to continue questioning Brooke.
Look, guys, we should talk about this.
What about it?
You don't want me up there testifying.
Why not? What's going on here?
Hunter's having second thoughts about our defense.
Are you?
This isn't the place to discuss it, guys. Look, just don't put me up there, all right?
I have to.
Oh, Jonathan, no.
We're back in session here, ladies and gentlemen. No more interruptions, please. Ms. Emerson, you can cross-examine the witness.
Your Honor, it's apparent that the defense counsel would like to put Mr. Jones on the stand. If this is true, I'll waive my right to cross-examine Brooke Chambers for the moment.
Are you sure?
Absolutely, Your Honor.
Mr. Young, do you want Mr. Jones to testify?
Yes, Judge, I do.
Mr. Jones, will you come up here and be sworn in? Mr. Jones.
Here's a bad idea, Jonathan.
So what did the doctor say?
Not much. I'm just supposed to stay in bed.
So what are you worried about?
I've been bleeding.
Well, I'm sure if the doctors don't think it's serious.
They don't know what to think at this point, Mike. The one thing that I know is I can't give birth to this baby, not now. It's too early. He wouldn't survive.
Sheila, I'm sure the baby's gonna be just fine.
Thanks.
I mean it. I know about these things.
Sure you do.
But hey, I'm no Dr. Kildare, but I know how much you want this baby. You know what I did last night?
What?
I said, you know, I prayed.
For me?
Hey, I wasn't going to be praying for me. I'm helpless. Of course it was for you.
You're a really good friend, you know that.
That's an understatement, Sheila. A very big understatement. I don't think you really know how much you mean to me.
Mike, you're a really good friend. But it's never gonna be anything more than that. You know, we've had this talk before. Why can't you just accept it and be my buddy, huh?
It's gone way beyond that for me.
Oh, Mike.
Look, I don't want you to feel bad about me. Hey, I brought some cards. What do you say we play some gin rummy?
I can't.
Why?
Oh, James called a while ago. He's on his way over.
And I'm still on the lam. I can't be around here when he shows up.
I'm sorry.
You really think it's going to happen for you and the shrink?
It's been more attentive than ever. Though I'm sure that's because of the baby.
No, it's not. It's because of you. He loves you. How could he not?
Please tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury something about your background, Mr. Jones.
I did my postgraduate degree in chemistry at the University of Melbourne. I then moved to Scotland Yard for 5 years, where I worked in their crime laboratories. I then came here for 12 months on loan to the LAPD as part of the reciprocal exchange program.
Now, you mentioned crime lab. Any specific position?
Ballistics and related matters?
Did that include the testing for gunshot residue?
Yes, it did.
What is gunshot residue? Tell the jury, please.
It's the residue of burnt gunpowder that comes back out of a gun under the hands and sometimes clothing of anybody who fires a handgun.
And how is gunshot residue, or GSR, identified?
By finding and identifying trace amounts of barium and antimony.
Does the mere presence of barium and antimony in a person's hand mean that that person's fired a gun?
Not necessarily.
Or when does it not indicate that?
When it's not actually gunshot residue.
Well, now, so the jury can understand. Are you saying that barium and antimony is not gunshot residue?
Sometimes it is. When it's simply the elements of barium and antimony.
Well, how do you know when it's just barium and antimony, but not gunshot residue?
When you find the right amounts of both, or when the amounts found are out of proportion to each other.
Have you examined the lab reports in this case showing the presence of barium and antimony on the defendant's hand after he was arrested?
Yes.
In your expert opinion, does the barium and antimony on Ridge's hands indicate gunshot residue?
In my opinion, no, it does not.
Can you tell us why not?
For comparison purposes, I tested one of the cartridges out of the gun in question. Now, based on that test, there was too much antimony and not enough barium found on the hands of the defendant.
Let me ask you this. If the barium and antimony found on Ridge Forrester's hand is not GSR, how did it get there? I mean, is there any way those elements could have gotten onto his hands without firing a gun?
Judge, I don't see the purpose of this.
The purpose will be very clear before we end our case, Your Honor.
Before you finish this witness, Mr. Young. Otherwise, I'll have to strike the witness's testimony. Proceed.
All right, I'll ask you again. If the barium and antimony on Ridge Forrester's hands is not GSR, what is it How did it get there?
That's more like it.
Hi.
You're looking very good.
Well, thank you.
Wow. You smell very good.
Guess I still have a few friends out there.
I take it you've spoken to your doctor.
No.
Then why are you in such good spirits?
Well, you know, funny thing about that, I started feeling this way when you called to say you were coming to see me.
How's the baby?
It's still here.
Good. Let's try to keep it that way for a couple of weeks.
I'm trying. Believe me. But I am still spotting.
It hasn't stopped?
Nope.
I'm gonna go get the doctor.
Why?
We need some answers. And I'm gonna get them.
The barium and antimony found on Mr. Forrester's hands could have gotten there in several ways.
I mean, besides the shooting of a gun?
Yes. If he'd handled something which contained the elements in question, there'd be evidence of them on his hands.
Well, do you know whether he did so?
Based on my investigation, I believe I do.
All right, let me ask you directly. Did your investigation reveal the source of the barium and antimony found on Mr. Forrester's hand?
Wait a minute, just 1 minute. I object. Counsel is using this hearsay information to prove some ridiculous theory.
Your Honor, we are prepared to call Grant Chambers' secretary, Megan Connolly, and Mr. Chambers himself to the stand.
To establish what?
To establish the fact that just before the shooting, Mr. Chambers ordered his secretary to take this printed material, which we'll identify as Defense Exhibit B, put it directly into Ridge Forrester's hands.
1 moment, Your Honor. What about that? So it's true. Your Honor, I still don't see how this proposed exhibit is relevant. But to save time, we'll stipulate that Mr. Chambers had his secretary place this exhibit directly into Mr. Forrester's hands shortly before the shooting.
And it was printed just that afternoon.
So stipulated.
Now, let me ask you the same question I asked before counsel interrupted. What, in your opinion, was the source of the barium and antimony found on Mr. Forrester's hand?
The freshly printed designs.
You mean the printed material that Grant Chambers ordered his secretary to put directly into Ridge Forrester's hands just before the shooting?
Yes.
Well, how did he get barium and antimony from that printed picture?
Not from the picture, Mr. Young. From the ink that printed the picture.
The printer's ink?
Yes. It's a common source of barium and antimony.
Are you telling this court that the most compelling evidence against the defendant, the alleged gunshot residue found on his hands, was in reality printer's ink?
Yes.
So, if someone wanted to frame someone...
Objection!
Argue it to the jury, Mr. Young, at the proper time. The objection is sustained. Proceed.
No further questions.
Ms. Emerson, would you like to cross-examine?
Oh, yes. I certainly would.
You mean she's improving?
That's a little soon to say. How about that pain? Does it still hurt?
Yes, it does.
But no more contractions.
No, thank goodness. Good.
Now, the minute you have one, I want to be notified. You know that.
Well, you make it sound like almost if you were expecting it to happen.
Well, it's very possible Miss Carter will go into an early labor.
What if she does?
Let's deal with that if and when it happens.
No, I'd like to deal with it now. I'd like to know what would happen to my baby.
Look, with each week that passes, your baby's odds improve. If we can delay this birth for even another month, you'll probably have a completely normal delivery.
And if we can't delay it, if I have it today or tomorrow?
Well, then it all depends on the birth weight.
James and I were talking about that, and we want to make sure it's more than 2 pounds.
Ideally, yes.
All right, so the baby's born, the baby weighs 2 pounds. Then what?
Barring complications, we put him in the neonatal unit.
Well, for how long?
Maybe 3-4 months.
Oh, my baby would be here for 4 months.
Possibly.
You say barring complications. What complications are you referring to?
In a premature baby, our biggest concerns are lung development and brain damage.
Oh, God.
But I cannot emphasize this enough. These problems will dissipate the longer the baby remains unborn. Even 2 more weeks would make a big difference, Sheila.
Thank you, Doctor.
Don't be discouraged. You are in one of the top neonatal units in this area. Just rest and relax. And no stressing. That's not going to help. I'll check in on you later.
The doctor's right, you know. The worst thing you can do right now is to worry.
Yeah, well, you're not worried?
Why don't you let me worry for both of us? We are going to get through this. You're going to have a baby. You're going to have a healthy, beautiful baby. Why don't you focus on that?
In addition to testing the bullets in the gun, you have also spent a great deal of time examining a number of other articles which were removed from Mr. Chambers' office by the police. Isn't that right?
Yes.
You even had this piece of leather cord, People's Exhibit number 17, tested for barium and antimony, didn't you?
Yes.
Find any barium or antimony on this cord?
No, I didn't.
This jury has been told about an award that was in Mr. Chambers' office. Did you have that tested?
Yes.
You thought that Mr. Chambers had used that to prop up the gun, right?
Right.
Find any barium or antimony?
No, I didn't.
In fact, you know of nothing in that office that had a trace of barium or antimony on it, do you?
No, I don't.
After you learned that nothing in that office had even a trace of barium or antimony on it, you continued with your investigation, didn't you?
Yes.
You even spent time examining this golf tee.
I looked at it.
You tested it for GSR, didn't you?
I tested several items.
But your fascination with this tea continued even after the test came back negative, didn't it?
I was curious as to what it was doing there.
Did you think Mr. Chambers had used this tea in some magical way to fire the gun at himself?
No.
In fact, sir, as you sit there even now, before God and this jury, even you can't believe that Mr. Chambers inflicted this wound on himself, can you? Can you, Mr. Jones?
No, I can't.
You're telling us that everything we heard in this court with regard to your self-infliction theory, Ridge Forrester's entire defense, in other words, is all invalid? Is that what you're saying, Mr. Jones?
I'm saying that Grant Chambers didn't shoot himself. That's all.
Indeed. That's all. I'd say that's plenty. Wouldn't you, Mr. Jones?